Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Cuda Education. Today we are going to talk about physical devices and logical devices. So, Vulcan API. Physical devices plus logical devices. Okay, so this now is yet another discussion on the Vulcan API. Okay. So physical devices basically deal with the actual GPU on our system, right? So we might have multiple GPUs in our system that we are working with, right? We might have multiple GPUs, and the Vulcan API sort of is trying to achieve some kind of goal, and we have to manage these multiple GPUs through the Vulcan API, okay? And then we also have logical devices, which helps us to actually request and implement what we want on that specific physical device. So, my plan is just basically to draw out a bunch of stuff and, help you guys to understand what's going on. So we have over here our Vulcan API Core. And in a certain way, it's really an instance, okay? So we have the Vulcan API Core, which is kind of like our application, in Visual Studio, and the API itself. So all the things that comes with Vulcan, Vulcan is a piece of software and all that stuff, right? So we have our Vulcan API Core, which is an instance, all right? Now, we have to somehow connect this to a physical device. So we're going to call this physical device GPU number 0. So this is GPU 0, okay? So we have our API, Vulcan API Core over here, and we have our physical device over here. And we need the two to work together so that, for example, we could render a triangle on a screen, right? With color, all that good stuff, okay? So we have our Vulcan API on this side, physical device on that side. All right. So this is sort of the purpose of what they call a physical device. It's basically getting Vulcan to basically acknowledge a specific GPU and basically trying to figure out what are the capabilities of this GPU. Now, it might not just be one GPU, there's gonna be several GPUs. So maybe you have 3 different GPUs in your system that you have access to. And those 3 GPUs are very different. They have very different capabilities. They have very different things. So what your application has to do now is to find a GPU that can do what your application is trying to achieve. So in our case, we are trying to do some kind of graphics, which is presenting a triangle with color to a screen. Okay, so what are the things that we would sort of query the physical device for? You know, when we're creating our physical device, what are some of the things that we can do? So one of the first questions that you would ask is, do you support Vulkan? Okay. So do you support Vulkan? Does this hardware, if it's, you know, whatever GPU, it could be an NVIDIA GPU, an AMD GPU, an integrated GPU, graphics card GPU, do you support Vulkan? Does the hardware vendor, the GPU, does it have the support of Vulkan, or did they implement the drivers and everything? Does it support Vulkan? That's one thing. Another question could be, what version of Vulkan do you support? Another very important question. You could support Vulkan, but maybe the version of Vulkan you support can't do the things that we want to do. Maybe it's an older version of Vulkan that has certain things that are disabled or what have you. You know, maybe the hardware vendor, the GPU vendor, is no longer around, and they're not updating their drivers or whatever to support the latest version of Vulkan. Okay, what hardware features? What hardware features do you have? So, for example, there's texture compression. There's like VR capabilities. Are you a dedicated GPU? Or are you an integrated GPU? So these are the questions that you ask upon creating a physical device for your Vulcan API core or for your instance. So these are just some of the questions that are on the more physical device layer, where you're trying to figure out on a hardware level and even on a software level, you know, what are the capabilities of the physical device. But we're not done yet. There are more questions that we have. This relationship between the Vulcan API core or the instance and the physical device is almost like dating. So Vulcan is dating GPU 0. And in any dating situation, there are a lot of questions. So we're going to continue with the questions. Some more questions that we have is Q families supported. Okay, so what Q families do you support? What are the things that you can do with the GPU, right? In terms of a Vulkan conversation. So some of the Q families you have are graphics related Q families. So this is about putting pixels on a screen. Okay. There's compute related Q families. This is more focused on straight computational power. You're not trying to present anything to a screen. The GPU might not even be connected to a monitor where you could see something. It's straight computational parallel processing that you're trying to do, and you're using Vulkan as your means of doing the parallel processing and all that stuff and communicating with the GPU. And then there's other things like transfer and like sparse memory or what have you. But I'm not too familiar with sparse memory. So, Q families that are supported. So again, the Vulcan API core is sort of querying the physical device to find out what are the capabilities of the hardware and what are the sort of capabilities in terms of Vulcan Q families does it support. Again, it might be related to the version of Vulcan that you support. And of course, if you don't support Vulcan at all, this Q family conversation will be irrelevant, right? Everything else will be irrelevant because the hardware, the GPU hardware doesn't support Vulcan. So this now is all talking about the physical device side of things. So let's say this GPU, it's only a compute GPU, and we're trying to present a triangle to the screen. So we're not gonna use this GPU because it's not it doesn't have graphics capability. It's purely a computational GPU. Has no ability to present graphics or anything like that. So we want to present a triangle to the screen. So we're not going to use this. We're not going to use this physical device. Okay. So what we're going to do is we are going to use a different GPU. So let's say we do physical device GPU 1. Okay. So now this GPU, same situation. We're gonna query the GPU, but now we know that it is a graphics GPU, so it can do the graphics stuff that we want it to do, and of course it supports Vulkan and everything. So how do we go about requesting the features? How do we go about requesting the features that we want from the hardware? Well, we do that via logical device. And the thing about logical devices is that you could have many logical devices. It doesn't have to be just one logical device. But here's the thing now. Since we know that GPU 1 can do graphics and stuff, we're also, through the logical device, we're also going to ask, is the swap chain extension available on physical device? So through this, we're going to ask, swap chain extension available on physical device. So first of all, it might surprise you guys that actually the swap chain is a function of the GPU. The swap chain is not inherently a part of the Vulcan API core. It is part of the physical device or the GPU, and it's an extension of the physical device and GPU and all that stuff. So all this conversation about swap chain and stuff is really part and parcel of the GPU itself and not necessarily Vulkan, right? So that might surprise you. I know, we've discussed swap chains in other discussions and what have you, but it's very important to understand that it's an extension off of the physical device. And we manage that through the logical device. So the logical device says, okay, is the swap chain available? We're going to use the swap chain. And then also what queue families. So we want graphics queue family. Okay, so notice, guys, here we're through the physical device conversation, we're simply querying to find out the capabilities of the hardware. But through the logical device, we are requesting, like, we want to use the swap chain extension and we want to use the graphics queue family. So now we're requesting things that's going to be our relationship with the physical device. Okay, so the physical device is kind of going to be an interface between the application and the logical device is going to be an interface between the application and the physical device. All right, just a couple things. The logical device doesn't interact directly with the instance. So remember, we said this is like the Vulcan Api Core, and then the Vulcan Api Core works with the physical device, and then but by way of the logical device. But just understand that the logical device and the instance are separate and apart. Sort of the physical device is in the middle, but at the same time, if you want to interact with the physical device, you do it through the logical device. Don't ask me to necessarily get into detail about why this is the way it is, but basically, like, when you're creating the logical device and specifying what you need out of the logical device, at no point do you mention the instance. All right. Another thing to note is that the instance itself also has extensions, or it also manages certain extensions. So one of the big extensions that is necessary for the instance to manage is the windowing system. So in other tutorials or in other discussions, I've talked about the GLFW windowing system, right? So we have our swap chain, we have our lineup of images, and then we want to present to the screen. Well, in order to present to the screen, which is the window on our operating system, we have to use GLFW. So there's a process where, through the instance, we query what extensions does GLFW need from Vulkan in order to be able to present an image to the screen, or pixels on the screen, or what have you. And that is managed from the instance here. So extensions can be instance related, like GLFW, and they could also be GPU related, like this swap chain, which is connected to the GPU. So, we could have other physical devices, right? Right? We could have other GPU 2. Okay? So this is another physical device. Maybe this is a dedicated device, maybe this is an integrated device, maybe this is another integrated device, but they might have different capabilities or what have you. Anyway, this is my explanation of how physical devices and logical devices work. You could check out, I think it's tutorial number 4. I'll have a link in the description below that talks about it. So check out tutorial number 4. That goes into detail into actual running code on a Windows-based machine. Like, we actually have code running, and in tutorial 1 we show you how to get the code running on your Windows-based machine, and we run the code and we dissect the code and we tinker with the code and we play around with it and what have you. So this now is tutorial number 4, talking about logical devices and physical devices. Definitely check out CudaEducation.com. Thank you for watching. I'll also have a link below to the whole store itself on the Amazon ecosystem, where you get all the tutorials. All of my tutorials are video walkthroughs. I record my screen and we go through the whole process of whatever it is we're talking about. So in this case, it'll be physical devices and logical devices. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.